moving over to the defensive side of the ball, they lose a lot of production from the 2023 team between guys graduating and others moving on through the transfer portal. Kind of what did they do to shore up the defensive unit in the spring? And do you expect the defensive scheme that they run to kind of change under the new coordinator, or will it continue the way it was?
I don't expect much change because when Dave Duggan was here, Cody kind of got promoted to co-defensive coordinator. Scheme kind of stayed the same, and now that Cody's taken over, I wouldn't expect too much change. As far as what they did to shore up the defensive side of the ball, I mean, they did what they could. They lost some guys a little bit late into the spring, like C.J. Harris, C.J. West, who just today announced that he was headed to Indiana. Really veteran linebacking group, though. I mean, Caleb Johns, Matt Harmon, those guys are going to have to step up. I actually think defense was the strength of this team for the last couple of years. It's going to be an inexperienced secondary. But Naeem Muhammad and Terrell Miller are two corners to look out for. Terrell's been with the program since 2021, and then Naeem Muhammad just came over from West Virginia. So there will be some growing pains for sure. I think is the real veterans are, like I said, in the linebacking core with an inexperienced secondary. So we'll see what happens there, but I wouldn't expect too much drastic change in terms of scheme.
So let's look at this defensive line. They lose C.J. West and Macchio Williams, but return Stephen Daly and Oliver Billett, Tyler Baylor, and Mathis Carroll. They bring in Cameron Olds from Buffalo. How did that unit look in the spring, and did anyone stand out to you?
They look pretty good. I think Stephen Daly always stands out. He's a pretty tenacious pass rusher. He's just a sophomore now, so he'll be a fun player to watch. Tyler Baylor is solid too. I mean, on the interior, he was mainly the guy that was making plays on run plays last year. But Cameron Olds, the guy that they just got from Buffalo, really stood out to me in the spring game. I have it pulled up here. He actually intercepted. He got a pick in the spring game and brought it from one red zone all the way to the other. So I mean, if a defensive lineman's making a play like that, that's pretty promising, I think. But I would definitely say that Olds is the guy that stood out on the defensive line for sure.
Is he an interior guy or is he an edge guy?
He's an edge guy. He's an edge guy.
The linebacking group loses one of its leaders in Devin Nicholson to graduation, and Khalil Saunders and C.J. Harris to transfer portal. They do return second leading tackler Nick Giacolone, Rocco Nickel, and Saeed Abu Hamde. And they bring in Luke Fulton from Kentucky and Mason Woods from Towson. How did the linebacker group look in the spring, and kind of who stepped up to fill Devin Nicholson's role?
It was Matt Harmon mainly. He's a graduate student who's also had some struggles staying on the field, but he's a really good player when he's healthy. And he's 6'5" and he's playing linebacker. So I would definitely look for Matt Harmon and Caleb Johns. I mentioned him earlier, but those are the two guys. Those are both graduate students. They're going to have to step up. And like I said, with that inexperienced secondary back there, it just puts that much pressure on your front seven. And I think it's important that the linebackers, are veterans for the program. And those two guys, I think, is who are going to have to step up to fill that Devin Nicholson and C.J. Harris void for sure.
It's not often you see a guy playing linebacker that's that tall.
Right, yeah.
Well, the defensive backfield may have taken maybe the most losses this offseason, losing leading tackler Bryce Shepard, DJ Miller Jr., and Jelani Williams to graduations, and Capone Blue to the portal. They do return Alex Branch, Josh Baca, and Xavier Coldy, among others, and bring in Dallas Branch from San Diego State, Caleb Moody from Harvard, Malcolm Folk from Syracuse, and Jalen Dotson from Monmouth, who stepped up in the spring to fill these vacated roles. And how did that group mesh together?
Yeah, again, I mean, it's an inexperienced secondary. Josh Baca was mainly a special teams player, and Alex Branch, the pride of Twinsburg High School. He was awesome last year. He's going to be awesome again this year. He's a really talented safety that they have back there, and he kind of I I believe will be the captain of the defense. But I mentioned these two guys earlier as well, Naeem Muhammad and Terrell Miller. Those guys are going to have a lot of pressure on them on the outside, and they stepped up in the spring game and they looked good. And they're both graduate students, so they're guys who have been with programs for a while. They have experience, even though they don't have the snaps to show for it. But those are the two guys that I'm looking at, and they were good in the spring game, and we'll see if it translates to the fall.
If you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who would that be?
Stephen Daly, man, sophomore. He showed a lot of flashes, no pun intended, on his freshman year, and I think he's poised to have an impressive year. He could be living in opponents' backfields.